Welcome to the podcast called All Things Good. I'm Fred, and I love the idea that there's more good going on in the world than we realize. That goodness happens. It just, sometimes we don't see it. And I've had some things going on in my life and in the world that made me realize I don't need to listen to all these negative voices, all these contentious people. I have chosen to look for goodness. And that has really helped me to not get anxious, help my mental health, in so many ways that there is goodness going on all around us. That's who I am. That's who I'm wanting to become. And so today I've asked Chris Saunders to be with us. I've known Chris for a few years. And I've invited Chris, first of all, because I just love her heart. She has a heart for God and a heart for people, and non-pretentious, just who she is. And you've seen goodness happen in your life and in the city. But what began your journey of seeing, God's goodness in your life? Talk about that, that very beginning that kind of changed the trajectory of your life.
Sure. Well, I was actually at Seattle Pacific University working on a degree to allow me to teach.
Yeah.
And a man named Luis Palau came and spoke to our student body, and he shared the love of Jesus to us. And I had actually heard, that you needed to ask Jesus in your heart to avoid hell or those things. But for me, getting to know Jesus as someone who loved me and gave himself up for me was the key piece. And Luis had shared that throughout a week of chapels. And I was one of many who went forward and said, "Yep, that's what I'm putting that's what I'm staking my life on."
So basically, it was the love of God,
yes,
that changed who you are, and
Yep.
that the Bible talks a lot about the love of God, and that actually you didn't say the words, but the goodness of God leads us to change. It's experience how good he is.
Yes.
Changes our lives.
And gives us that sense of beyond whatever the negative is that's happening in your life, that there's more than what you're experiencing right then, if there's a negative going on.
Yeah.
So.
And you also had an interesting experience where you went through a class and it really changed the trajectory of your life. And so, our listeners might not know this about you, but you're really driven by something that is very compelling, that not only have you received the goodness of God, but you see yourself as a person, like you're an agent of goodness in the world, right?
Well, yes, I took a class called Perspectives, and it talked about how we can, just by following the Lord and doing as he asks, we can we can be engaged in all sorts of impactful and good things that help other people and bring them through whatever need they have.
What was the word you used that you saw yourself, what did you say earlier? Something about mission. What did you call it?
Oh, being on mission.
Being on mission. What does it mean for someone to be on mission?
Well, it means that you're always aware. For me, what it means is I am always aware that I carry the answer for people who are struggling with something.
Oh, okay.
And it's been interesting because God has taken me into some very deep, dark places. And I've had just the tremendous privilege of seeing massive change that only the Lord can do in someone's life through that.
I think you hit on something really important, that whether a person's a believer or not a believer in God, is that there's a purpose for us that's bigger than ourselves. And
Oh, yes.
last couple of years, I've seen people pretty absorbed in their own little interest, and a lot of people that have let the events of the last few years really make them only looking for the bad things in the world. So their mission is to look for the bad and fix it. And I don't think that's what God calls us to do in that way. But the mission, to see yourself on mission, is a more positive way to see your life. So again, what does that mean to be on mission? Is it? I know for me, that was a change in me, where I just like Mr. Church guy. And what I love about you as well is you're not very churchy, and you're just who you are, right?
Right. Yes, exactly. Let them see who I am, because part of who I am is they'll see Jesus in that, I hope.
Yeah. So, being on mission is outward for it. What does it mean to be on mission for just an average, everyday, down-to-earth person?
Well, I can tell you a story that's happening or unfolding right now.
Okay.
Seems to be a simple story. I've got more complex stories than this, but I have two young people who are in Scouts, and I don't know what they're trying to accomplish, but they contacted me and said, me and another person, and said, can you help us? We want to collect 700 shoes.
Wow, 700 shoes.
Pairs of
shoes.
So
That's a big goal.
1,400 shoes.
Whoa.
Yeah, they got a big goal.
Yeah.
And around town, there'd be gently used shoes, and send them to Africa to help women who are being entrepreneurs. They need to have shoes. And so they want to send them to Africa to give to those women who need those shoes. And so they were asking about where could they put some boxes and what can they do and accomplish and so on. So we're in the middle of that. That's their need.
How'd they find out about that need for these women in Africa?
I haven't been able to talk to them
okay.
enough yet to know.
But they saw something.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, and with it, they're accomplishing something they have to do for Scouts, for an award or a rank or something like that. But they reached out to us. Somebody knew that I was the former chairman of the coalition, and so they reached out to both the current chairman and me. And so we're working on generating help for them to get that done. And I just love the project, I'll tell you. Yeah. I love the community. I love the community for Africa, all of it.
I love it when people take action like that.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things that we also share is that we have a concern for people who live in apartments, especially if the people that live there are under-resourced.
Oh, yes.
I've been involved with doing some things with people and apartment managers. I'm hoping to do more. But when you took that class and you saw yourself on mission, how did you go into action then? You did something.
I took my husband out for breakfast and said, I want to sell the house.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And we actually didn't know where God was leading us, but I just knew we needed to simplify our lives. And so we put our house on the market, and at the same time, a very interesting ad in Craigslist popped up.
Okay.
And I read it, and then I read it out loud to my husband, Pat. And it was being a community team. So in other words, you're going to do a bunch of events in a apartment complex to meet people. And in meeting people, then you find out what their needs are, and you step in to help with what those needs are. Sometimes it's as little as information. Sometimes they just need to come over and play a game with other people. Sometimes but whatever those needs are, you work on building relationships with those in the community. and it was a
That's
lot of fun.
That's radical. I mean, I can imagine if I went home and told my wife, "Hey, we're selling the house. We're going to live in an apartment," that would not go over very well. But
It
you know,
went over very well.
you what?
It went over
It
very
went
well
very
at
well.
our house.
You must have a good relationship there, because, I mean, acts of goodness sometimes do mean something has to change. I want to.
Yeah.
I want to be part of, a momentum. You said come with a servant heart, and when you dealt with, or reacting and interacting with people in the apartments, how did that expand your view a little bit?
Well, it's been actually some of the things that have been an amazing. One of the things we found in our apartment complex, it was probably a middle income apartment complex, and we had an amazing amount of immigrants there. I would say 25% of the apartment complex was immigrants. So we literally met people from all over the world. And that in of itself helped us. Why were they coming? What were they doing? How was it? We hear so often about immigrants coming in across the borders, having nothing, having no skills, etc. And the opposite was true here. They were bringing even doctorates and so on that they were coming into our country with to help. A fair amount of them were working at the fort, but living off the fort property. And we just really got a chance to meet all sorts of people. They didn't have family in the area, so then we did things for them that a family unit might do and so on. And we are still friends with many of those people today.
I've been to Africa a few times, and I've enjoyed interacting with people there that really do change my perspective in that class. And then I've met people that are immigrants in hospitals and
Yes.
around, and I admire, they've had their challenges to try to figure out what it means to be here. And one of the things that I've learned is they are us.
Yeah,
Not
they
to
are
see them
us.
as other than us.
Right.
That's a good thing.
Yes.
It's like, you decided to join us. No, they are us. They bring such warmth, so many of them, and just, I think the interaction between different peoples of different cultures that you experienced is something that's enriched my life. It's been good, all things good. It's been really good for me to do that. It changes my outlook on things.
Yeah.
But
Mine too.
The other thing, I mean, this is where we kind of interacted, is we were united to care for this city. We've got people
Yes,
together
yes.
from businesses and organizations, community services, churches together to care for the community. And you were instrumental in helping kind of resurrect that when it wasn't really going well. And I admire your leadership on it and getting people together to actually do some things together, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes, we've had a really good experience with having people, first of all, just gather and then talk about what were the needs in the community. One of the biggest needs that really popped up it was really a year-long conversation, was the fact that our disability community was not having their needs addressed in this community. Needs for socialization, needs for training, etc. There was just really nothing in our community for anyone with disabilities except there's a little bit at the senior center and, of course, the school district. But then when like a child timed out at 21 in the school district, they would disappear into a home and never be seen again.
Oh, my.
And so we have carried on a conversation about that we're going into our third year yet with it, but out of that, the community is rallying around a community project to build a playground where kids of all abilities can
Wow.
participate.
What a great vision.
Yeah.
And you had a little bit of resistance from time to time, right?
Of
Whenever you try to
course.
do something good, there's going to be some resistance. However, you persisted, and
Yes,
things are
we're
progressing
close.
well.
Yeah, we're doing very well.
One of the most impactful things for me about seeing goodness is this idea that we're all made in the image of God.
Yes.
And I can look at a person who either emotionally, physically, or mentally has some kind of disability and see them just as valuable as another person and not less than in any way. Is that kind of what's driving this?
Well, it's hard to really slice out what's driving it.
Right.
But I think a mom that I met at Oktoberfest really kind of summarized what you're saying. I was going around asking people to donate to the playground, and I handed her a card, and she said, "Well, what is it?" I said, "An inclusive playground for those with abilities and disabilities." And she stopped me right there and said, "You had me at inclusive." And I said, "What does that mean?" And she said she had a daughter who has autism, and when she was taking her to like education professionals and so on in those days, they would say something's wrong with their daughter. And I said, "Oh, you mean God created her that way, and there's no need to call her wrong. She is strictly created this way for a purpose, for who she is." And that mom jumped up and just, yes, that's exactly right, and went on for a while. And I listened patiently, but I run into that all over the city. That discussion goes on and on and on throughout the city.
When it comes to all things good, one of the first things that need to change is we need to be able to see goodness.
Yes.
To see goodness, as you talked about, in the immigrants, to see goodness with people with disabilities, to look past the cultural blinders that we've been giving and see, I need to change my view about that. There is goodness in everybody I meet,
Yes.
that I can be a part of either pulling out that goodness or helping provide for that goodness.
Or shoring that person up too. Probably one of my more favorite stories of the last 8 years or 7.5 years has been a woman who was very suicidal for a year and a half. Tried probably 9 times. And I hung right in there with her. She didn't want me to talk to her about Jesus at all, but we just hung right in there. And she finally came to a place where she just laid it all down and said, "Help me," to the Lord, really. And things changed. A funny thing, that particular woman who has now made it back to God has come back to, she's always been a Christian, but she was fighting with him. She let go of her struggle, has now seen an atheist in her life come to know the Lord.
God turned that around.
And brought more goodness out of it. So it's an amazing and continuing to be an unfolding story.
So what would you say to our listeners today about both seeing goodness and being agents of goodness that really you've lived out in your life? Maybe more of and what would you say to them about that? So how could we encourage people to both see goodness and see ourselves being, part of the solution? What would be one thing you would encourage people? Maybe they would like to do something, but they haven't yet. What would you say to them?
I think that it's easy to look into where you're comfortable and just stay there. But you can take what you're comfortable with and engage with people. And in that, you will find needs and not
You don't have
find...
to be some radical doing something. You can just
No.
be an average person doing average things.
So if you like to play games, down at the senior center, they have a lot of different game times that they play.
Okay.
They play Pinochle, they play dominoes, they play board games. They have a reading club, etc. And if you go down and engage with that group of people, you're going to find needs. And in those, you get a chance to maybe not be the solution, but maybe you know somebody who can be the solution, like that.
I love that because a lot of us have good intentions, but
Yes.
we just need to act, even if it's a small action to move in some direction. Like tomorrow, I really want to do something. So tomorrow, how am I going to start? Well, maybe I start thinking about it or looking for it. So thank you for joining us today. Again, what I love so much about your life is that you live it. You've given example about how we can be an influence for good in our communities. And it doesn't have, you don't have to sell your house.
No,
But
no,
you can-
you don't have to.
but you can do something. And
Yeah.
those who are listening today, thank you for joining us today on our podcast called All Things Good. We're hoping that you can participate and be part of us again.